I'd like to start with this, and that is, Chris and I get asked all the time, hey, if you got dropped into a new market and you wanted to go build a business, you had to start from scratch, what would you do? And one of our first steps would be we'd hire virtual assistants. Why? Because we want to expand the leverage that we have, which one of the leverage points when it comes to business is people. And virtual assistants are a great leverage for you to now start making more calls and bringing in more leads day one, which shortens the time frame, because if you get more leads in your funnel, it's going to shorten the time frame between when you first start the business and when you get a deal. More leads, the better you're going to get on the phone, the more people you're going to go through and qualify, the more appointments you're going to get on, and the more deals you're going to make. So that's why we wanted to bring this to light today, because when we had our recent event, we had the VIP day, and the VIP and Associate Development Day are now the same. So we had the extra day on Friday that if you're part of our community or you paid a $500 ticket, you could attend. And during that, we had Brian O'Neill step up, sit in his chair, and walk through his business, how we went from 0 deals to now $1 million and created 3 paydays. And before we start everybody give Brian O'Neill a nice hand. He's got his first payday 3 today. First payday 3. It's like his birthday. And he also has a payday 1 like tomorrow too. So not a bad day for Brian. And he did that by building out this team. So, and the team consists of 2 virtual assistants. So that's why he has a couple more people that he works with, but he has 2 virtual assistants, which are the primary people in his business when it comes to generating leads. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. Woo, Brian, I just said a lot in a short period of time. Sometimes I don't even know how I do it. Brian, over to you.
Over to me. All right. Yes. So we do have a payday 3 as we speak. So hopefully everything goes well. The closing is happening right now, and I'm here talking to you wonderful people. So one of the things that Zach mentioned about going from 0 to 1 million is when I evaluate what I'm doing right now on a daily basis, I'd be back in my job if I didn't have my virtual assistants. I mean, there's just way too much to do, and you cannot grow and scale the business if you don't have a team. And I have a team of 4 people right now. It's myself, my 2 VAs, and I have an executive assistant who manages my email and my calendar and does a lot of the marketing stuff that we do. But I have these 2 VAs that one of them I've had for over 2 years. That was really my first hire other than a calling VA. And you should always have a calling VA, especially if you have a job. You want to make sure that your lead flow is consistent. So a dialing VA is critical. And before we really get into the team and how I've trained the team, it's important to understand, it's important for everyone to understand that you may have to go through several. I've probably had 5 or 6 calling VAs, and that's okay. And I've learned a lot of it was my fault because I did not give them the resources, I did not empower them, and I did not train them. It wasn't until I said, okay, hey, look, I eventually want these folks to run the day-to-day. I want this off my plate completely. And I want them, and this is what Zach really helped me with. We had a nice one-to-one conversation where we mapped this whole thing out. I want them to train their replacements. So as the business scales and they level up and they move into new roles, they'll be able to turn around without me and train their replacements. And that's really the power of doing this and spending the time with them. So Zach, I don't know if you wanted to whiteboard this or what.
No, we're just going to talk it through. But
Sure.
While we do this, so we're in the process of creating a strategic partnership with a company. It's not finalized yet, but I wanted to kind of use this as to see who's interested as well. With a company, actually, the owner of the company is one of my VAs that I trained like 6 years ago, and now he has 19 virtual assistants that are just servicing our community. And we're creating a strategic partnership with him that we can even potentially expand outside the community. So if you're interested, as we talk through today, we're going to talk about virtual assistants that make outbound calls for sellers and that are trained on creative financing. and also potentially virtual assistants that do admin work, like working CRMs and things of that case. If you're interested in that, just shoot an email to support@smartrealestatecoach with the headline or the subject line VA. Okay, just do that. So that way, when everything's finalized, you'll be on the top of our list to be able to access creative financing virtual assistants. So all you have to do is just email support@smartrealestatecoach and just subject line virtual assistant, type a quick note, and we'll go ahead and we'll get to you in the next upcoming days. Okay. So I just want to hit on that. So Brian, what I think would be important, because we really want to cover three things today. One is where to find VAs, which I just basically told you that we're gonna have them for you. So you may not have to look for VAs, but there's companies out there. So where to find VAs, but most important, where to find VAs that know creative financing. We just gave you that answer. But secondly, then would be how to train your VAs, and then third, we're going to cover how to track your VAs and to show improvement, because one of the number one challenges that we hear from our students is, I have a VA, but he or she's not producing like they should. And I would say, have you trained them, and are you tracking them? And then also the third section, if you haven't listened to the podcast that Chris and I did, it is, are you treating them as if they're your teammate, not a virtual assistant, not like, somebody that's disposable. I mean, like, you're spending time with them, you're having meetings with them, you're getting to know them just like you would a normal employee, where you would onboard them, have conversations with them, find out about their life, find out about their hopes and dreams, and start inserting how they can get to their dreams through your company. That's a huge difference. So, all right, Brian, tell us what it originally looked like, because I can already see people's eyes glassing over when you said, I got an admin, I got an executive assistant, I got a call-in VA, I'm scaling, I'm growing. Let's talk about when Brian first joined. What's the first VA you worked with? How did you train them? How did you work with them, and what were they doing?
Yeah, first VA I had, if I can remember the guy's name, I think it was Kent, came from your group, and he called FSBOs for 5 hours a week while I was still working my W-2. And I really relied on him to do the work and provide the leads. I didn't really train him. I shouldn't say I didn't at all. And ironically, the first taken I got was from him, from a lead that he gave me. So anyone who's ever thinking about the monetary aspect of this, like, it's always completely worth it. When you look at what the 3 paydays are, do not be looking at the hourly rate you have to pay someone, because one deal pays for them for like 3 years or more, right? So that was how it looked initially. I went through a few. I actually stopped with VAs, with the calling VA, for a little bit. Huge mistake. So don't do that. And then once I had several deals under my belt, and I started having to work the buyer side and the seller side at the same time, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I got too much to do. So my first hire was an admin VA to take. I made a list of all the $25 and below tasks per hour, $25 and below. I wrote everything out that I did, and I just said, okay, these things I don't need to be doing. I can give them to someone else. And that's exactly what I did. I hired her for 20 hours, and she essentially was running FreedomSoft for me. So, importing the leads from MyPlus Leads to FreedomSoft, dispositioning them, and really getting everything going so that I could just be focusing on making calls and not doing all that stuff. So that was hire number one.
Yeah, let's break this down, and we'll open it up for discussion as well, because we can keep this thing up. So why don't we start with, all right, Brian's first hire, VA outbound calls. I mean, that was certainly one of ours as well, and what we recommend for most others. So questions specifically on seller outbound call virtual assistants. You can use the hand raise reaction. We'll keep it and then we'll jump to admin VA, and we'll even talk about your executive assistants as well, if needed. So talking about seller VAs right now. Okay, well, we start with Glenn.
Yeah, Brian. So you've laid out how you started, where, the very beginning and such. So when you started to try to train them or guide them, what was your process and what was the secret?
Sure. So this is what the process looks like now, and it's taken me some time to learn this. And my calling VA now has been with me for over a year, well over a year. I think it was July of last year. So this time around, I said, all right, I'm doing this the right way. I eventually want this VA to take as much off my plate as possible. And that's where I'm at right now, to the point where she's going to start making call number twos and start doing deals. I don't want to get too far ahead here, but I'm going back a year. All right. Brand new VA, had never called a seller on creative financing. And I just said I set the expectation with her, and I said, hey, look, I defined with her expectation number one is I expected her, based on the number of hours she was calling, like, this is where you should be for leads. Okay. So and that number is typically 1 to 1.5 per hour. That's the expectation. And dials per hour. Like, you should be making this many dials during a session. Okay. Now, the mistake that I had made before was that I didn't empower the VA to get there. I didn't train them. I didn't give them the resources. I didn't make the mistake this time. So I listened to all of her phone calls in the beginning, and I critiqued them, and I gave her the feedback. I gave her the scripts, and we tweaked the scripts. So now what our schedule looks like, she started with me for 10 hours. I moved her up to 20. Now she's 35. So she's pretty much full time for me calling, and there's plenty of numbers to call. We have a weekly meeting that we meet once a week as a team, as a Takens team. There's 3 of us, and they have a voice. Like, I empower them to bring whatever challenges they're having. I'm trying to get them to run the meeting, not just me talking. Then we have a one-on-one. So I meet with her one-on-one. And like Zach said, I get to know my VAs. Like, I know about their families. I know about, their goals and their hopes and their dreams, like what they want. And I'm trying to get them there. So that's super important. And then this has really been the game changer, honestly, and something I never did before, was live script training. So I do every 2 weeks, and some of you have been to this before inside the community. I will take 2 or 3 of her phone calls that she picks. I'm like, give me your biggest challenges, and we'll go over them live. So I'll play the call live, and then we'll stop, and I'll tweak her scripts. And that has really been, for her, what has elevated her to the next level, is the ability for me to critique those higher level calls, and then she implements them right away, to the point now, and I've said this ad nauseum, she's better at call number 1 than I am. Does that answer your question, Glenn? I know that was long-winded.
Well, some of it, when you set goals or expectations, and I presume you weren't in the VA business. How did you say that you should be making this many calls a minute per day and such? How did you do that? Yeah,
it's what I've learned over the last 3 years. Zach taught me, Chris taught me, QLS teaches me. It's just, a lot of it is my own growing pains, but it's what I've learned inside this community.
So what is your expectations? What's the number of calls per hour?
Yeah, so what we're really looking for, Glenn, is now MJ makes about, if she sits down a 4-hour, if she takes a 4-hour session, right? And again, this is historically, she can make about, maybe 120 to 150 dials, including people that she speaks to live. And what we're really looking for, what I really track, we'll get to this in a minute, is how many people that she talks to on the phone live that she converts to leads. Because all the numbers that we track are the same, right? I can go over the last 3 years, and it's all very, very similar. It's how many people that she speaks to live do we convert to leads. And that's what we focused on. And that's really what she's improved on, even just in the last 4, 5, 6 months. She's gone from single digits up to north of 20% on her conversions, and that's really moved the business forward.
Yeah, we got a bunch of questions. So I want to hit on a couple of things, and we'll jump to Fred. Glenn, thanks for asking the question. It's sparking a lot of things. So a couple of things that popped up. So first and foremost, I can hear everyone saying, like, that's a lot of training to do. Like, now Brian's, he has meetings and he has one-to-ones. This is what we're talking about is good, better, best. You can certainly go to virtual assistant companies or one that we're working with now and have a good VA that is tailored to a niche, right? That's tailored to like making calls for anyone. What Brian has done is he's placed himself as the CEO of his business and became a leader, and now is leading his team to now start having them move the business forward without him, which is the duplication portion of this, which is Brian is doing exactly what Brian does with all of his students as a coach and teaches them how to get better on the phone and create better conversion rates from outbound calls to leads, which is one of the first fundamental conversion rates that we look at. So he's just doing this with his team now. He's leading his team. So now he moves himself from doing to leading. And the more times in which he can interact with his team in a positive way and creates the vision of them moving forward, he gets them to move forward. So he's spending and pouring into his team long term, so that way they'll grow and scale with his business. So one day, Brian doesn't even have to worry about doing deals. He knows that deals will be happening when Brian's in Mexico. So that's the long-term vision. So I know everyone's thinking, well, that's a lot of time to pour into. But also, Brian didn't do that day one. I want everyone to hear this too. As he's grown his business, he's done a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more with his business as he decided to grow it. So don't take like you got to do all these things tomorrow. No, focus on, all right, if I could just have one interaction at the beginning. The first thing I used to do is just have one meeting at the beginning of every week where I talked with the VA for a couple minutes so they got to know me. We went over their metrics and KPIs. We talked about what their challenges were. We tried to hash them out, and I would do some call critiques throughout the week. Like that was my VA training. And then, you continue to grow and build a team surrounding that now as well. All right, let's jump to, it's a hot topic. Glad we talked. Fred, go ahead.
Hey, forgive me if I missed this, but in listening, Brian, I heard you say, at least I thought I heard you say, yeah, my first hire and all, jobs that were under $25 an hour, I paid for her to upload the leads, My Plus leads into FreedomSoft and get that done. But then you said, the first hire was the calling VA. And I'm just curious, did you have someone supporting you administratively, let's say, as it relates to FreedomSoft, My Plus leads, and in anticipation of you making calls? Or did you actually hire the VA to make calls prior to your doing even that part?
Yeah. Okay. So I did not have a CRM for the first 3 months, as many of you have heard. I did it all pen and paper, which is completely doable. I'm not talking anybody out of doing that. I'm just saying that's what I did. So I didn't have a CRM to load anything into. I did everything by hand. And then once I got the CRM and I started realizing, hey, I'm spending a lot of time doing this and I got all these deals and I have a job, by the way, that's when I knew I had to invest in an admin VA, which took all this stuff off my plate so that I could do what I do best, which was talk to sellers and go on appointments and get houses under agreement. So that was my second hire. I still had the calling VA.
Awesome. Brian Blankenship, which Brian, I heard that you're going on your first appointment. So congrats on that.
Sweet.
Mr. Blankenship.
Yeah, that's tomorrow. So that should be exciting. Yeah, I think you just touched on it a little bit here, Brian, but I was curious to know, like, as you're going through the training, do you, outside of scripts, right, did you have any other documentation? So when you did start to have a CRM to help a VA navigate, did you have anything set up for them prior?
I just use scripts. I use the QL, and you'll develop this too, right? You'll use the QLS script as a baseline, right? And then you'll develop your own style, not going off the script too much because the stuff works. So make sure you stick to it and you're asking the appropriate questions. but I just developed it a little bit more towards my style, and that's what I gave to her. And her is MJ, if you've heard me speak to her. And I've also given her the same freedom. Like, hey, if you feel like saying something differently that works better for you, do it. Like, you got to test stuff. Like, always be testing your script. So she has the baseline, and then she has the freedom to be able to try stuff. I've given her that, and that really helps. That's important to give your VAs, because you got to remember, they're making a lot of calls and they're saying the same thing over and over. It gets boring. They get burned out. So I just say, hey, look, try something different. It's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, Brian, great point there as well. And I just keep going back to, if we replace the word VA with teammate, like, this wouldn't even be a question, right? It'd be like, hey, you have a script, or new investor. It'd be like, here's your script. Here's your baseline script. You have a different style than I do. Like, nobody's going to have the exact same call. As if you listen to my record calls, your calls are going to be different, because you're going to have a different style. You're going to have different words that you choose to use that you're comfortable with. So that's exactly what Brian's doing. He's saying, here's the script. Here's the key points I need you to get across. This is mandatory. These are the mandatory questions that you need to ask. The rest of this rapport building, that's on you. If you choose to use some other words, perfect. Be yourself. There's no better way in order to get deals done as being authentic. So I love that. Great point, Brian. Mr. John Clark.
Hey, Brian, I was curious, how long after you do a training with your VA do you expect to see metrics changed from that?
Okay, so I'm just going by recent memory here because I'm getting older. Y'all supposed to laugh.
Is that
all right? Thanks, Zach. So we had MJ at the beginning of this year. She was converting single digits on live to leads. So live calls to converted to leads. And she had probably been calling me for about maybe 6 months at that point. Very talented. And we said, okay, we looked at all the data, because I have 3 years of data, right, that I've tracked since I started. And we said, okay, the numbers are all the same. Like, you're not talking to less live people. There's not less contacts coming in. Like, everything is the same. This is the one area. It's the bottleneck. So I said, okay, we're just going to work on your scripts more. We're going to do more trainings. I inserted the script training. We focused on the conversions. And I also clearly defined with her what a lead was. That was a mistake that I had made. So it wasn't her fault. It was my fault, right? But I had the data. I said, okay, what's the issue? We discussed it in the meetings, and I had realized that I had not clearly defined to her what a lead was, which was collecting the information from the seller. They don't have to say yes to terms. So once we did that, the numbers literally doubled overnight. So now she's in the 20% range, and we're working towards 30% conversions, and she will absolutely get there. Again, same number of contacts. We're doing the same number of calls, same number of live people. She's just converting more people.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. And I did laugh, by the way.
Good. You get a gold star.
Yeah. Nobody laughed, Brian. Kyle, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Brian, you kind of just almost answered my question there. It was regarding what do you considering a lead for your VA, and you just said collecting information from the seller is what you're considering a lead. So part of that lead sheet, and I imagine anything where they get an email from the seller, that would also be considered a lead, and that would get put, of course, because I'm new to Freedom stuff. I'm launching this Monday with my VA. So just make sure I had the process in my head that's also considered a lead, and then they would come to me, and then I go and I do the follow-ups.
Yeah. I think the easiest way to explain leads, I mean, it's filling out the property information sheet, but anytime that you talk to a seller live on the phone, there are really only two outcomes. They're going to tell you to go where I'm not going to repeat it, and hang the phone up, or the other option is they're going to sell you their house to you or somebody else. So that's a lead. That's how I qualify it. We take it all the way to the end, especially if we're talking to them, we're collecting information. We want to make sure that seller that we spoke to, that we've spoken to for a minute or however long it is, that we follow up with them until they sell their house to us or somebody else.
Yeah, awesome point, Brian. I'll just give some additional context there as well, and that is, if you get all the information, right? So the VA's job is not to rebuttal. The VA's job is to sift and sort and do lower end reaching out to people so that way you can have a bigger educated call with them at a higher level because you have additional information that you would normally spend 20 minutes getting. Instead, you have it there now, so now you can have a higher educated call with the seller so that way you can start working on the actual deal structuring of the deal and or spending more time on motivating and creating new solutions. So filling out the entire property information lead sheet, and it goes into your follow-up funnel. So I just want to point this out. So let's say a VA calls and they fill all the information lead sheet and the seller goes, yeah, but it's sold. All right, well, of course, there's no chance you're going to buy that house. So there are going to be certain circumstances that it's impossible for you to buy their house because it's either been sold or something happened to it, burnt down. I don't know what it is, but just doesn't fit. So it has to go into your follow-up system, meaning the follow-up system could mean you're following up, or it could mean that you're reaching out to them, filling out the information, and you're saying an email and following up with them in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever the case may be. They don't have to say yes to terms because I'll be honest with you, 99% of the people we buy from want a traditional sale, and they're probably not going to say yes. And the ones that do say yes probably have no idea what the heck you're talking about, especially the VA. So that way you have to walk them through the situation. And historically from us, there's a little check mark on the property information lead sheet, and it says, are they open to terms or lease purchase? And the ones that say no, we convert at least 33% of those to yeses. So don't worry about what they say to that. It's your job now to have the detailed conversation to really determine, is it a yes now and working on the deal? Or is it a no or maybe or later? And then you have to figure out where it goes in your funnel. Stefan.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Two quick questions. One, Brian, you start off by saying that when you first started, your requirement for your VA was 1 to 1.5 dials per hour. Then later you said you got to a point of in a 4.5 hour session, you expected 120 to 150 dials. So that comes out to about 30 to 45 dials. So was it that you switched to a multi-line dialer? What was the or is that 1.5 dials actual live calls expectation on
Yeah.
the pushing?
Let me just clarify. The 1 to 1.5 per hour is leads.
Leads.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then the actual dials. I was just giving you her output that she currently does in a
Okay.
4-hour session. Right.
Gotcha. Then my other question, even on those dials, the 120 to 150, how often do you cycle back to that? Because I'm certain a lot of them you're leaving voicemail messages or don't. How often do they just keep piling back in, or do you keep funneling in new pulls from, your lead source, or what?
Yeah, we contact every seller multiple times because most of them are not answering on the first call. So we have a mix of dials and text messages that we use to get them on the phone to convert them. And that is we typically touch every seller about 5 times, and then this is the way we do it. This is the way I do it. Doesn't mean it's right. This is what works for us. If we're talking about expireds, they're gonna get refunneled back into our CRM again. So they'll likely get touched another 5 times because their status is going to change. Their listing status change. It gets triggered in My Plus Leads, and we put them. They get back into the CRM.
Does your VA get credit for text messages that go out that people respond to?
Well, she doesn't send the text messages. I have somebody else, and I'm not sure what you mean by credit.
Well, because if somebody responds to a text message, then somebody's eventually going to talk to them and likely could convert to a lead.
Yeah,
So,
the text message, Stefan, was actually something that we implemented to get more people on the phone for her. That's why her conversions went
Gotcha.
up from single digits, because a lot of people weren't responding to the phone calls. So we used the text message as a resource, as a tool to get more people on the phone for her. And as a result, her conversions went up. So yeah,
Right.
she gets credit because she handles all call number ones. I make no call number ones anymore. which is the goal. Again, I was spending so much time doing that. Now I have someone else do it, which is wonderful. Let me just tell you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right, Miss Morgan.
Well, now I have two questions. The first one I'll do to follow up from what Stefan just said. Brian, so she calls once, leaves a voicemail. When does the text message come in? Is it after second voicemail or what? Just curious about that.
Yeah, it's immediate. It's like the next day.
So
there's two within like 3 or 4 days, and then another phone call, and then it just gets repeated.
So it goes voicemail, text, voicemail.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good tip.
Yep.
And then this was my original question, super nuts and bolts. Without a CRM, did you have your VA sending the email if they got, if they talked to someone, get their email address, or did you do that?
I did it all. I did it all myself. So when I was at that point, again, this is just the way my brain worked in the beginning. And I was also coached this way, was not to get bogged down with CRMs, right? I had one at work that I hated. So I just said, I don't need another CRM to deal with. So I just did everything pen and paper until it got to the point where I couldn't manage it anymore.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But did you ask your VA to send the email, or did you handled that?
No, I did it all. I did everything.
Okay.
I just took the leads from the VA, the FSBOs, Morgan, and called every one of them.
And then email, and then send them information or whatever.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. So when we first started, we just got PDFs emailed to us of lead sheets, and then we would use a 1 through 31 folder, which equivalent to every 1 day of the month. And you had a phone call. They said to follow up in 2 days. You put it in that 2 days away, and then every morning you would have your follow-ups, and then you'd start dialing to the new ones. Super old school.
Way. Would still work today.
I'm doing it. That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, it keeps. I always ask people when they first come out of our community, are you tech savvy? Like if I gave you a CRM tomorrow, you wouldn't need to spend hours on like understanding it. And if you say no, that you're not texting, I said just start making phone calls. That's what I told Brian. Brian said, what should I do? I said print out a bunch of expired calls and start making phone calls, because the number one thing you need to do when you first enter in the community or start in creative financing is know how to speak with people. That's it. It's the number one skill set. Nothing happens unless you get better at communication. That's what we all had to learn. It took me 6 months to get really good at that, and that's how I got my first deal. So it just takes time. Brian happens to get his deal in 71 days or something like that. So
you got a good memory, man. I got to tell you.
I try. You want to know why? It's because I'm not old yet.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Any other questions in regards to seller VAs?
Osama here.
Yep.
Question number one, when you say record the VAs, what do you use to record?
Yes, the calls are recorded automatically in the FreedomSoft CRM that we use.
Oh, FreedomSoft. Okay.
Yep, very easy.
All right. The second question, if you would just deal with stats, call number one, let's say one dial per hour. So you are talking, is it a dial per hour, or what is 1 to 1.5 per hour?
Yeah, that's leads. So this is just a general rule of thumb. You're going to want to collect your own data and track this. So
excuse me, they typically make a lot of calls, and a large percentage is no answer. So what is you are saying one successful live call per hour?
No, I'm saying okay. So if your VA is calling for 1 hour, let's remove the number of dials from the equation. Like
Okay.
that's not relevant. If they're calling a list for 1 hour, the expectation is to have them get 1 to 1.5 leads in that hour. That's the expectation.
And the lead here is not necessarily a yes lead. It's one sheet with collected information.
Yes, sir. As we defined earlier. Yep.
And you personally would make a closing call on those PI sheets.
I would follow up on those leads. Yes.
And when you say convert, you are expecting one of those sheets for every hour worked. So for an 8-hour day, you expect 8 of these sheets daily.
That is correct.
That you follow up. All right. What is your conversion ratio from a sheet to a deal? At least to a yes.
Yeah, how many leads does it take for you to get a deal, Brian?
Or to a yes, at least.
I'm sorry?
At least getting someone to say yes to terms, because some yeses don't end up closing.
So I'll give you my high level metrics that we track. There's a few things we track, and this is 3-year data. This is all time. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the things you really want to pay attention to are how many leads do I need to get to go on an appointment, right? To get in front of a seller. And that historically is about 15. All right. So every 15 leads, I go and I see a seller's house. And then the other metric, major metric that we're tracking is how many offers do I have to make before we get a house under contract? That's about 4.5 historically. The other one, the big one, let me finish.
4.5 offers to generate one lead.
Yeah, 4.5 to get to a taken. All right. And let me get the last one, which is how many leads do I need as a team to get a deal, to get a house under agreement? That's 55. It used to be 20. It used to be 26. Now it's 55.
55.
5.
Yeah, 5. Okay. Leads to generate a deal.
To get a house, to get a contract, house under agreement.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, let's jump. We got 5 minutes left. So Brian, you're up. Rapid fire. Brian.
Yeah. So Brian, can you talk about the transition from, say, getting the seller call, right? How does that work within your team, transitioning from seller to the lead?
I'm not following you. Can you explain a little further? I don't understand.
Yeah. So it's more of like the mechanism, right? Okay. So MJ gets you a lead. Okay. Where does that go within your funnel and within your team?
Got it. So it goes to me. So it's we tag it as Brian's to call them. That's going to start changing here soon, but that's what happens next. So lead, it's Brian. Brian follows up with them, and I've also trained her to target the ones that are of higher motivation, like call these people first.
Good. Cool.
Good.
Larry, how are you?
So Brian, at what point do you convert them to a terms person or find out if they're open to terms?
If I'm talking to them, they're usually open to terms. If they're not, I normally determine relatively quickly whether or not this is something that'll work for them, because I'll want to dive in a little bit deeper to their motivation, because MJ may have not uncovered it. Again, that's not her job.
So when the leads come to you, they have not been qualified as being open to terms as yet.
At the level she's at, yes, but with your VAs, They don't need to do that. As Zach mentioned, that's not their job. Their job is to collect the information and give it to you for follow-up.
Yeah, let me be clear too. So if you guys are in QLS, which QLS Home Study Course, if you're not in it and you're in these calls, you're always going to be way behind. So I recommend just go dive in. It's an entire system. But the property information lead sheet has specific questions to information that we want to know in order for us to have an educated conversation. So it's not like I'm being a little facetious, but it's not like the VA just asks them like, tell me about your property. Why are you moving? And then like jumps off the phone. There are very specific questions about the motivation, timing, price of the property, financials on the property. There are questions in regards to, are they open to terms? Are they, are they open? If it's free and clear, are they open to owner financing? Those questions are all there. Plus lots of notes based upon the person's personality or additional things that we should know about that seller. So that way we can be really prepped and prepared to have a conversation, which is where Brian now steps in and says, all right, I have the information from the VA. I'm now going to have a call. That way I can dive into this call, dissect and hit on key points that I need to know in order to push this lead forward. Primarily motivation, timing, financials, and then really baking in a solution through creative financing. Then at that point in time, the person's then said, yes, I would consider these options. At that point in time, that's when Brian goes on an appointment. So he's pushed them to a point where they're now saying, yes, I would consider these types of options if it provides a solution. That's when then Brian determines if he should go on the appointment, because then the appointment is about going there, seeing the property, but also about really solidifying the deal. Because I bet you if somebody asked you, if you had a gun to your head, would you be able to close a deal on the person or on the phone? You would more than likely say in person. So that's why we say then get out in person, build that relationship, and start pushing this deal forward.
You're going to have to leave in a minute, but how do you find your VAs?
So we have a company that we're going to start working with. So we usually have either somebody hire them for us and then provide some additional training specific to creative financing. But then you're the one that's going to have to work on them in order to get them more involved in your business, because you're the one that's going to know your business the best and how to train them best. I mean, even the highest level of VA trainers, you just can't unless they're creative financing people. It's just they're not going to be able to bring them to the highest level.
And what's the range of prices that you pay?
Yeah, when you want somebody that's fully trained, I mean, you could pay anywhere from $10 to $20 an hour. If you want somebody that you have to train and bring from scratch, I mean, you can go get the $4 to $6 an hour VAs. Most people that are on this screen are trying to build a business while working a job. So you pay in order to have other people create that leverage for you. And that way you can just have them work and then you train them to be a part of your team as time goes on. Awesome. Last question. Morgan, you're up.
I wasn't the only one. Somebody put this in the chat. Brian, will you share with us what the content is of text message 1 and text message 2?
It's too long-winded to do it now, but anyone who's Zach, you let me know how you do this. I mean, I can put anyone who's in the community obviously can get it, but
yeah, just the associates, Brian, if you don't mind, just throwing it in the members channel on Slack. Type them out. We have some cool things that we're working on actually right now in order to help you guys get better and better CRMs dialed in with our stuff. So that will be coming here soon. We're rolling up towards the end. Again, we thought that this was a powerful conversation that we thought we needed to have, and clearly we were right. You can thank Brian for that. He's been screaming about training VAs. Somebody asked if we have a product. We don't just yet. Maybe we'll have one soon enough. I just would be curious if we created a program, and of course you'd have to pay for it because it would take us a long time in order to put this thing together. If you had to pay for it, would you buy a VA product where we showed you exactly where to find your VAs, train your VAs, track your VAs, all of the ins and outs of working with a virtual assistant? Just type in the chat and just put the why. Because then we're going to know really if we should do it or All right, Brian. I think they want you to do this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good test.
Good test.
Secondly, we are in the process of creating a strategic partnership. It is not finished yet. So I want to say this with caution. If you're interested in having a creative financing VA for your business, it doesn't matter if you're an associate or not an associate. This is for across the board. Just email support@Smart Real Estate Coach and write in the subject line virtual assistant and just type us a note in the email. We're going to collect all of that. And if the thing finalizes and goes through next week, like we think it will, then you'll get an email from us and we'll tell you about the process. Okay. And these primarily are seller VAs, but we are considering training and having admin VAs available as well.
Awesome.
But we're just trying to test out and see if there's really a need there for it. So we appreciate if you want guess anywhere probably from $10 to $20 an hour. That's my guess. I don't have an exact time, but know that it's not like the $4 an hour VAs because we're going to spend a lot of time training.
Zach,
Cool.
I have one quick thought to share.
Yeah, please go.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be quick. So the cool thing about doing what I did, and again, I spent a lot of time and I invested a lot of my energy into both of my VAs. And here's something that happened that was super awesome. Okay, and this is what can happen when you spend this is what will happen when you spend the time. So I trained my VA how to do everything with FreedomSoft, load up all the information, disposition everything. I trained her with videos. She was out with a family event, and I had her recreate all the videos to her own. I had to go back and watch the videos that she created on how to do all of it. I forgot how to do it. That's how long it had been since I'd uploaded the information. So I had to go back and rewatch her videos. So that's really, I love that story. And I knew that I did my job the correct way. And now I have this library of videos that she created. So when the next person comes in, they just got to watch that.
Cool. Well, maybe that's what the product will be. Awesome. Everyone, have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll see everyone soon. And we'll see all the associates here on the private mastermind here in a minute. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your day. Talk soon.
Have a great